Hey everybody, welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. It is the final episode of season 3. I can't believe it, honestly, but we are excited to be here with you today on the podcast. I have your favorite co-host. You have not gotten to see her in a while, Lindsay Stagg. We are talking about what we're learning right now. The way we're ending the season is to talk about what we have learned, what we are learning, maybe even what we would like to learn. And so I can't wait to share with you as we talk through rhythms, relationships, what we're learning about God, progress, the little things, and everything in between. I can't wait to share it with you. But before we do, I want to share a couple of partners with you for today's episode. It's officially summer. You're running the roads with sports, travel, and all kinds of things without as much time to cook or get snacks from home. Daily Press is here to help. Daily Press has fast and friendly service for your busy schedule with their made-to-order deli options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for the craziest days, their fresh grab-and-go options in the open-air cooler and hot-to-go box. What you might not know is that they have a wide variety of frozen take-home meals and appetizers. Plus, you can't forget about all the baked good options and the fresh brewed coffee, of course. Daily Press has 4 locations, making it convenient for you and your family, and are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at all but one location. Plus, it's a family-owned business, so stop by Daily Press today. If you are making health choices for you or a loved one, that can feel exhausting and confusing. So that is why you need to know about Northeast Imaging. Northeast Imaging is a patient-friendly diagnostic testing facility that is doctor trusted and patient preferred. They offer MRI, CT, X-ray, and ultrasound. They have a friendly staff who is committed to focus on high-quality scans and intentional care to the patient. Plus, they're referring providers. And listen, it doesn't matter if you're using your health insurance or you're paying cash, Northeast Imaging is almost always more affordable than local hospitals. The facility is conveniently located at 1703 Lammy Lane in Monroe. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., so tell your healthcare provider you want to go to Northeast Imaging. And now to our final episode for season 3 with my conversation with Lindsay. Lindsay, how are you today?
I'm here.
It's the last episode.
It is the last episode.
I mean, how do we feel about that?
It's kind of wild, but also kind of good.
Yeah.
Because I think we're both ready for a break.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It is so bittersweet.
It really is.
Oh, like,
yeah.
Season 3, we learned a lot.
We did.
In all the ways. But,
yeah.
But yeah, it is like, I think we're ending on a sweet note.
Yes.
I think it's going to be sweet to have rest.
Yes, absolutely.
To dream for season 4.
Yeah.
All things.
To be able to like kind of take a mental break.
Yeah.
Because I know some of the things we've talked about for season 4 are exciting. And it's like, I'd like to have the energy to, actually do that well. So yeah,
I know. I feel like sometimes we'll talk to people and they're like, well, have y'all done this? Or do y'all do this for your scheduling or whatever? And I'm like, that sounds amazing. We cannot change that till season 4.
No,
we're at max capacity.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of things that even in my tired and weary state don't feel as daunting because we did learn so much in season 3 that it's like, okay, well, we'll figure that out
right
on top of the system we already have. Or
absolutely. Yeah, I'm very much like in a space of I'm totally willing to like learn some new things and implement kind of figure out some new stuff, just not right now.
After the beach.
Absolutely. After yes. after
I
beach.
I would love to do that
after beach. Yeah, where I'm like the thought of implementing some kind of change like towards the end of season 3, I'm like absolutely not. Won't do it.
Yeah. No.
I don't think I have the brain cells to do it.
I get that. Well, and like we actually had some topics we were talking about. We kind of filtered through some and then went to lunch yesterday and you were like, hey, what if we did this? I'm like, I love that actually.
Yeah.
What am I learning?
Right.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What is that?
I know. No, I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah.
Just the Lord, I guess. Because I was like, I don't know, that would be kind of fun to talk about some things that we've learned.
Honestly fits in like with some of the things I have in my notes. We have not compared notes at all.
No. I think I'm probably winging it a little more than you are today.
Yeah.
I'm here.
That's a lot. But I think like we'll talk about this more, but just being able to show up as is and like trusting the Lord's going to do something with that, and that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the topic, the format, everything feels
Yes.
spot on with where we are, what we're learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
that's how I always show up to these with you. I'm like, well, Lord, give me words today.
Yep.
I feel like me and Lori were talking about that when we recorded. That sometimes you listen back and you're like, "What? Did I make a coherent thought? I'm not sure. It sounded good in my head."
Specifically remember, I think it was season 2 when we first began Topic Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Was that season 2? I feel like it was.
Yeah, it was.
And we talked about friendship, and you were talking about like a season of change and whatever, and like needing new friends for the season and the place, like physical place that you're at. And I was trying to make the statement, I've never prayed for friends and God not provide. but I got I start a thought and then I'll backtrack and be like, well, let me give the background and then go back to that thought. I do that a lot. I'm learning. What I'm learning is stop doing that. But I just literally said, I've never prayed for friends, and then switched it.
Which is actually not true at all. It's not even close to true.
But I didn't realize I did it until like something in your countenance was like, huh. And then I was like, wait, I don't think
that didn't come out right.
I never paid for friends and am not provide. Anyway, all that to say, there's no telling what I haven't caught.
I don't know. But I know most of the time he is. Most of the time people can pick up what we're putting down, hopefully.
Be gracious to us. We're learning to be gracious.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me give some background. We kind of opened it up. I think your first statement was, what are we learning from the Lord or with the Lord?
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love. And I think all of the things we talk about today is going to be tied to that, because when you are yearning for an eternal lens and you view everything you do in life as something to image him or give you rest to do his work or whatever, then all these things are tied together. But we kind of broadened it by saying it could be life hacks. It could be, I haven't learned any of those, but it could be if you'd like it to be. I would like to learn those. But to kind of broaden that and say what we have learned, what we're learning, what we'd like to, and the rhythms in spiritual places and all of the above. So,
yes.
What comes to mind first?
Oh, I was going to ask you what comes to mind first. You beat me to
I said
it. Man.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh gosh. Well, I think I know for me what comes to mind first is maybe what I'm currently learning, because honestly it is, I don't know, it's very like fresh on my mind, and it's kind of a more recent thing. Like I feel like the Lord has kind of made me aware of this particular thing maybe in the last month or two. And it's just kind of cool because I think some of what I have learned really kind of like
set you up for
like meets me in this like current thing.
Sure.
But it's like every time I turn around, like there's just something that, and I think what I think is so cool about that, because I was even just thinking, this let me go ahead and say, like, I think right now what the Lord is showing me and teaching me is how to pay attention to my thought life better. And how to pay attention to some of those like negative thought patterns that I've maybe had for who knows how long, or maybe they're new, or, that just in relation to like other people and certain circumstances, and even just some negative beliefs that like I think I've had for a very long time. And it's not even, I would say negative beliefs, but like, honestly, I think what it really boils down to is like, hey, there's not truth. Like some of that's not true. Like, why do you, why is that what you think? And anyway, so like what I think is so gracious in all of that is that the Lord would even like give us eyes and ears to like see and hear him, like even in that, because I think that's something that we probably all to some degree struggle with, where, like you don't necessarily even realize sometimes like, hey, wait, why am I why do I feel this way? And then to even just pause long enough to take the time to be curious and ask some questions. Like, I don't think I've
Mhm.
ever done, like,
Mhm.
I've never been good at that. And just through the past season of life and just counseling, and there's been so many things that I think have led to this point of being like, hey, wait, you still have some things that like you've got to like surrender to me, and also speak truth to, like, stop letting that
Mhm.
dictate how you respond in all these situations.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's gracious, in our walks with the Lord, like how he that we could even sit here and say like, yeah, this is something different or something new, and like
Mhm.
the Lord's given me eyes to see it and an awareness of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at right now, is just like learning
The
how to do
ability that
that. Like
you
just the
can renew your
ability.
mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And scripture tells us that. I mean, tells
Mhm.
us, and
Yeah.
there are so many verses. The one that comes to mind is in Second Corinthians about, and the part that for me right now, that's a big deal, is it's not just taking every thought captive, it's making it obedient to Christ. So
Mhm.
it's taking this thought or this belief that maybe is driving something that you don't realize it's driving,
Yeah.
and saying like, no, what does the Bible say about this? What does the Lord say about this? Does this even match up with God's character? Because if it
Mhm.
doesn't match up with God's character, like, let's start there.
Right.
And just being able to like kind of pause for a second and come up with like what's true, and ask the Lord,
Mhm.
okay, so God, if this is what I'm thinking and this has been there for who knows how long, kind of just in the recesses of my mind, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Like, what do you say about this particular issue or this particular thought, and what is actually truth? And then just paying attention to whenever it pops up and just saying, like, no, no,
Mhm.
that isn't true.
Yeah.
And what is true?
Yeah.
Um, and that's, it's harder to do,
Yeah.
because I think it takes some slowing down and,
I was listening to a podcast. It was with the Perrys, and I think it was like a rerun that
mm,
they published because they've taken a break from their podcast. But my sister-in-law sent it to me. It's called I think it was How to Fight for Your Marriage.
yeah,
And so like everything was very marriage oriented. It was a good episode. But there was this one that I was like, this could apply to
mm.
every relationship, every
Oh, I think you
thought.
sent me that one. I haven't
Yeah.
listened to that one yet, but I remember us
I
talking about it.
think I finished it. I made it through the majority, but one of the rhythms that they've set in their marriage, this other couple they were interviewing, is to say, to confess the lie they're believing right now
Yeah,
within their marriage. Like,
yeah, yeah,
if he didn't give you a gift that is something you would like and your love language is gifts,
yeah.
then she was like, hey, can I tell you that like the lie I'm
Hmm.
believing is that you don't really think about me?
Yeah,
Because like the gift is shows the thought behind, and
yeah,
so being
yeah.
able to like not just have this surface level like
Hmm.
cat fight about this isn't what I wanted. That sounds really petty and surface, but
Yes.
it's not. Like the deeper thing was I don't feel like you thought about me, and I don't feel
Yeah.
like you know me, or take the intentionality. I'm not a priority. You can take that into a lot of different areas, and like confessing that, because when you can confess that,
Hmm.
one, you're acknowledging it's a lie with your words, and then two, they're getting to see, oh, that's not true at all.
Yes.
Let me tell you what's true.
Yes.
And so you get straight to the heart of things.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and so,
No.
but I'm like, that can like go
Mhm.
into what I'm believing about the Lord,
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
so.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that. I feel like maybe to some extent, maybe this is why this is kind of coming up now, because I do feel like in counseling, that's something Con and I like our counselor, this has been, I don't even know how long ago, said something to the effect that like almost every surface level argument, now yet there are going to be some
Mhm,
just ridiculous
mhm,
silly nonsense things that
mhm.
you're tired or
You're
you're
tired or
hungry or
hungry, yeah.
whatever, but that
Mhm,
the majority of
mhm.
our
Vast
little
majority.
cat fights really actually have something deeper at the heart of it, and usually it's something like that. It's, hey, you did this thing that like communicates to me, you don't see me, you don't love me, you don't care about me, you don't, all these things.
Mhm.
And so just taking the time to actually like communicate. And so
Yeah.
it's messy, but
Mhm.
doing that to some extent. But I think that's translated more for me into, yes, like we do that together and we communicate like, hey, that this is how like
Mhm.
I'm interpreting this right now, and I know that's
Mhm.
not true entirely. So like what, let's
Yeah.
figure that out. But for me personally, it's just kind of realizing some things that maybe have been there long, like just some beliefs that have been there for a long time that I
Yeah.
just didn't realize. Like I don't,
Mhm.
never
Yeah.
realized what was at the heart of it. And so
It
it's
is.
cool.
It's doing the work of not throwing the accusations at the other person's
Yeah.
feet,
Yeah.
um, by saying, "Hey, when you didn't take the trash out, I want you to know I know this isn't true, and I know that you do care about me, but when you do that, it makes me feel like you're taking me for granted and
Hmm.
you expect me to do XYZ, or it makes me feel like you didn't see these other." When you can do that, that person now can hear you without
Hmm.
defensiveness,
Yeah.
and that's hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do often,
Yes.
because like relationships are constant, but that pattern is so helpful.
Hmm. Well, and I will not, because I didn't write it down because I thought, oh, that's easy. I'll remember that, and then didn't.
Yeah.
And this was just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
But on Wednesday night, Jordy was saying, and he made a statement that was basically like, I'm going to totally butcher it. So sorry, Jordy, but it was pretty much like our thoughts inform our feelings inform our actions. So it's like if we
Mhm.
start with our thoughts and
Mhm.
figure out, well, what even of this is true, and 9 times out of 10 there is a degree of untruth in most of the thoughts that we you know
Yeah.
and so that makes you feel a certain way, and then you act out of those feelings. Well, it's
Right.
like, well, we're acting out of untrue things most of the
Mhm.
time, like a lot
Mhm.
of the time. And so I don't know.
I would also argue that our actions can also influence our emotions and our
Yeah.
thoughts and beliefs. I think that statement is absolutely true and so good. But it's funny because you started what you're learning with your thought life,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like a lot mine are a lot more, a lot
A
mine.
lot of mine.
Yeah,
Not mine.
it's the last episode. They ain't all gonna be winners.
No.
Okay. um, um, but a lot of mine have more to do with rhythms and
Yeah. Yeah.
practices and progress. And it's not because I'm focused on performing
Mhm.
necessarily, which that might come up again. But one, I'm reading Habits of the Household, which
Yeah.
is very like focused on the rhythms, but it's focused on the rhythms that you claim are your beliefs. Like,
Yeah.
are you setting
Yeah.
these beliefs into rhythms?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I do set healthier rhythms, it forces me to be at war with, why is this rubbing me the wrong way? Because my first one is I'm learning to connect with my kids in new ways.
Mhm.
And like life has been really crazy lately, just with a lot.
Yes.
Where do I even start?
Yes.
Nowhere. But it's been really crazy, and so we haven't had a lot of slow time or family time,
Yeah.
which we are really wanting to change in some drastic ways. But um, I think we talked about this in the last episode, which any moms listening highly recommend going to listen to the last episode that we talked called Playing House.
Yeah.
And we talked about like why do we struggle to just sit down and play with our kids or
Yeah.
rest? Those two things can be interchangeable in this thought, not necessarily they're not the same thing, but in this thought pattern. I feel like sometimes like when I used to sit down and play with my kids, and still to this day, like this is not fixed, it's what I am learning, is when you feel so comfortable in working and striving and tasks and doing and performing whatever you want to fill that in with, and you have had a habit or pattern in the past of making that your identity and worth,
Mhm.
even if you know that you know that you know that your worth and identity is in Christ, when you sit down to change those rhythms and you sit down to play even when there's work to be done, and you make time to rest even when there's tasks to be completed, you are at war with the
Mhm.
feelings of that.
Yeah.
But when you create the rhythm of sitting down because no, my worth is not in those
Yeah.
things. And I think like the thought that probably surfaces to most people's minds when they're having struggles with playing or resting or doing
Mhm.
something fun when they have things to do is, what do I have to offer, or what's
Mhm.
the point?
Yeah.
Maybe even I'm not really a fun person, or I'm not really, I I'm not good at being still or rest well. We hear things like that, but underneath that is like not really feeling comfortable
Mhm.
with just resting because you do you do kind of feel maybe worthless,
Yeah.
because if your worth has felt like it comes from what you do,
Right.
then when you're just being with those that you love, you feel like, what do I have to offer?
Yeah.
And that feels maybe a little exposing,
Mm-hmm.
to sit down. And so that is something that I am actively learning, even though I know the thought. Doing that pattern, I think, has helped reinforce the right emotions and
Mm-hmm.
thought life, if that makes
No,
sense.
it really does. Because as you're saying that, I do think that the reverse can be true.
Hmm.
And it's going to take me a second to like remember exactly like how Tim Keller like said this, but I'm in the process of reading The Meaning of Marriage,
Hmm.
and he gives this illustration. Oh gosh, and I'm not going to remember like the full context of like what was his ultimate point, but basically he was saying um that it's easy for us to like love, like, okay, so when we take the marriage relationship versus like parent child relationship, and
Hmm.
basically he was just saying that like when this baby comes into the world, they have nothing to give in return, like
Hmm.
basically like the sacrifice, like the
Hmm.
sacrificial love that
Hmm.
happens essentially, I think is was the heart of it. It's been a minute since I read that chapter, um but basically he was saying that like it's action first
Hmm.
in a parent child relationship. Like you, as the parent, act before anything can ever be
Yeah.
communicated or reciprocated.
Hmm.
We serve, we love, we meet their needs
Hmm.
when they're not capable of doing that in return.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of comparing that, like, it should be that way, like in our marriages too, that,
Hmm.
but oftentimes it's not, it's no, I don't feel this from you, so I'm not going to do this. But it's
Yeah.
like, we don't do that. And then like and he was kind of saying, like, that's why you can look at, 18 years of life when they're under your care in your household and whatever. And, you can come across a mom whose son has made a poor choice or daughter's done something, but
Hmm.
like they love them so deeply no matter what,
Hmm.
because there was this action first. It was like, I'm choosing to love
Hmm.
and sacrifice. So it's almost like anyways, all of that to say, long
No,
road
I
to
love
get
it
there,
though.
that like
Yeah.
the idea of what you're saying, that like, no, my actions kind of will start to influence my thoughts. It's true. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's also true that way. Like, I think it
Hmm.
goes both ways, a two-way street of, we can serve and love, and like those deep feelings of,
Hmm.
you know, love and care and whatever follow,
Yeah.
because this baby can't reciprocate that. And so like you have all these years of serving and loving your kids
Yeah.
without necessarily, I mean, not saying that they don't ever communicate, but like
Hmm.
essentially they don't have a whole lot to give in return.
Right.
And that it basically, like, it should be the same, in our relationships, that we sacrificially love first, even if that may not necessarily be reciprocated all of the time,
Right.
which is easier said than done, but
It is. It is. Well, and like, where does it happen? When you have to.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you serve your kids when you
yeah,
want to and when you don't,
yes,
because you have to.
yes,
You're all they have, and so like it is a good, I mean, that is why becoming a parent in whatever way, form, fashion that happens, whether it's adoption, biological, mom, dad, whatever, that it strips a lot of selfishness,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you do just have to give past what you even have,
yeah,
and grow that dependence with the Lord. Oh, what was I going to say? Um, Oh, we see this even with people's stories. How often do we have people come on and say, "Well, I did grow up in a family that seemed to believe,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but I didn't really see any of that at home."
yeah,
And so, like, we see that all the time, whether it's on the Saltworks or just in
yeah,
people's stories, that we hear on the internet or whatever, where that was very confusing
yeah,
to even children. Of you you say you believe this, but I don't see you do it. And
yeah,
so obviously the Lord has wired us deeply for our thoughts and beliefs to match up with our rhythms and
yeah,
actions. And I think sometimes we need adjustment in thoughts and sometimes we need
yeah,
adjustment in
action,
rhythms.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree,
Um,
yeah,
so
hmm.
I feel like the last couple years, like in counseling and, a lot of the things we talked about in season 2 and maybe the beginning of season 3, was like, I was definitely like struggling with my theology, like how can you be good if this, and how, and
Mhm.
like I will have moments of that
Oh, yeah.
forever
Yeah.
because that's life. But now I'm trying, like, coming at it from the other side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's cool.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you have next?
Well, why don't we talk about some things we have learned?
Oh, okay.
You want to do that? Let's do that. Or
I have learned to advocate for myself and others and be okay with people disagreeing or
yeah,
not understanding.
I like that.
Um,
What is?
and like it was really, really hard, but I do
Yeah.
feel like I'm able to say I have learned that,
Yeah.
which feels good.
Yeah. Give us like an example, if you will. No.
Hmm.
A
Ooh,
generalized example, maybe.
well,
Or just like what, I guess, how has that shown up? Like, what does that
I can give
actually look
this.
like?
I had a really, really hard situation with a relationship that was tied in a lot of different roles.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go more into that because I don't want it to be specific. But it affected me in a lot of ways because
Mm-hmm.
of how many roles and beliefs that it hit on about myself. I have to be vague, but I think the standing statement when we had a conversation was that I didn't have empathy for this person. And I will say the first thing that I've learned that helps me is to be able to stop and empathize with why did that person feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
understand their perspective, because I'm able to have compassion towards, if I believed what you believe, I would believe that too.
Yeah.
And also, I think that helps us prepare like, hey, this person has this brokenness. They are going to see it this way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to explain it, and then I don't have any control after that about what
Mm-hmm.
they do with my information or actions that I've prayed about and thoughtfully considered. And while, yes, it was hurtful to hear that they didn't feel I had empathy for them, I know that I know that I know that that wasn't true.
Right.
And I have to trust the Lord to be my defender. And in that hardship, I've had to sit with the Lord. And this is where the real um, gumption comes
Mm-hmm.
from, is sit with the Lord and say, search my heart. Do you find this to be true about me?
Yeah.
In this situation or at all?
Yeah.
Search my heart and reveal, do I need to do
Mm-hmm.
this apology? Do I need to, and listen, we can apologize for something that we didn't do
Yeah.
without groveling or,
Yeah.
saying like people pleasing.
Yeah.
Like you can apologize that that was someone's experience. Um, but like to really sit with the Lord and sit with, is that who I am, because that's the way I'm perceived. And like when you have sat with him and really opened yourself up to like receiving whatever it is, and he does not show that in you, then you get up off the floor and you go, okay, then I'm going to walk in knowing
Mm-hmm.
that you would convict me and show me what I need to do, and I'm confident that I have your grace and favor on my life.
Yeah.
And this is not a mark on my character because that person perceived me that way or treated me that way or said this thing about me. It was a misunderstanding. It is not a true of my character. And
Mm-hmm.
move on.
Yeah.
Now, can my thought life grow bitter
Mm-hmm.
because my flesh wants to defend what I don't feel was right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially when I feel the story's told
Yeah.
and my part's not.
Yeah.
Again, I go back, search me, and then I get up and go again.
Yeah. No, I
So
love
it's been
that.
hard,
Yeah.
but
I
I
was
do
about to
feel
say
like
that's
I've
not
learned
an
that.
easy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a humility in that you have to, in those situations where you might be misunderstood, your character might be in question,
Mm-hmm.
that you would even be willing to say, okay, Lord, search my
Mm-hmm.
heart. And
Mm-hmm.
if I am, if there is something in me,
Mm-hmm.
show me. Because he's going to.
Yeah.
He will.
He will. Yeah.
And so I think that's so cool. Just to hear the piece of like, I think that's encouraging for anyone because, I think a lot of times like we can get into these situations where we do feel wronged or we do feel like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not fair or that's not right or that's whatever. And we want to defend ourselves. But I think what's so encouraging in what you've said to someone listening is that, first of all, humble yourself because We all have things.
Mhm.
And so be willing to ask the Lord to search your heart. But the second piece of that is if you genuinely are doing that and there is something, He's going to show you. So
Mhm.
rest in that.
Mhm.
Like, and if you do not hear, or He does not bring
Yeah.
that particular thing to it doesn't
Yeah.
like He does not make you aware of that, then rest.
And he might be showing you both. He
Yeah.
might be showing you, like, he might not be convicting you that you had wrongdoing or flawed character, and he still might be leading you to become even more lowly and gentle.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
those two things can be true at the same time,
Absolutely.
and they almost always are.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
sometimes it is that we need to repent, but even when we don't, he is
Yeah.
still going to use that to refine you,
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
and to go into your other relationships with a deeper compassion and lowliness than you had before, you know?
Well, and I think even there's a degree, and you've talked about, being a recovering people pleaser, but there's even this element of just the deepening of, rightly prioritizing.
Mhm.
Um, what am I trying to say? Just it's fearing God more than you fear man. And like
Mhm.
that's hard.
Yeah.
When we all probably have people pleaser tendencies in us. I mean, that's
Mhm.
just something that
Mhm.
everyone struggles with to some extent.
Yeah.
But being able to say, you know what, Lord, like I'm going to come to you with this and I'm going to ask you, what do you say about this?
Yeah.
And if this is what you say and it doesn't match up, your opinion and what you say matters
Mhm.
far more
Yeah.
than what this other person. And
Yeah.
there's freedom in being able to rest in that.
It
And
is. And that, I mean, that very much relates to my situation
mhm,
because I was acting in what I felt called to,
mhm,
and that was misunderstood.
yeah,
But like, I have to go where the Lord calls,
mhm.
and like, even believers are going to misunderstand that
Oh yeah,
sometimes, and that's hard,
that is hard.
you know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that will ever be defended
yeah,
on this side of heaven,
right.
and I have to be okay with that.
Yeah,
Because if he needed it to be for his purposes, he would,
yeah.
and
Mhm,
that's hard for me
mhm.
to hold on days that I'm really struggling, and on other days I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, well,
whatever.
whatever,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, I think too, like as far as people pleasing, like this sounds like such a simple thing. It's something that I am teaching my kids, but like I think adults need to hear it. It's not mean to say what you need to say.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like when a friend is doing something, like taking my kids an example, when a friend is doing something, it is not mean to say, "Hey, I don't like that.
yeah, yeah,
Can you please stop?" And like my kids think that's mean.
yeah.
I'm having to teach them that's not unkind. And I'm like, well,
Right,
you can say it in a kind way, and
right.
you're actually giving way for a better friendship there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind
Like,
of, it's boundary. Like that's setting like
yes.
healthy boundaries of
Yeah.
like, hey, it's not okay to treat me this way. Like I'm not going to accept
Right.
that.
Right.
And so, that's really what that boils down to. And that's not, it's kind of funny because I'm like, the very first topic we ever did, we talked about boundaries,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think. I think somewhere in that, like,
We're still
here
learning.
we are. But I think it gets it like that topic sometimes can get a bad rap of like, oh, this is just how you want to cut people out. And it's like, no, this is how we
Mhm.
can maintain a relationship,
Exactly.
but it be a healthy one.
Mhm.
And also to be able to say, like, hey, I'm not, you don't get access to me
Mhm.
if this is how you're going to behave. So,
Yeah.
for someone to do something,
And then
um,
with the people that I have less boundaries with, Lindsay, like one of the deep things that I have learned, and this has been a while since I learned this, but it's still so true. Like one of the biggest issues with people pleasing, and I can say this in a hard stance because I was one, is people pleasing, having the expectation of a people pleaser is arrogant
mhm,
because I'm not always pleasing.
yeah,
When I have the expectation for Andrew or you or my other close friendships or my kids to always be pleased with me, let's be honest,
hmm,
I'm not always pleasing.
yeah,
So even having that perspective, now, I think what's underneath that for a people pleaser is I want to know I'm always secure
hmm,
with those people. Well, that security is not exclusive. Is exclusive or isn't exclusive? I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's not the same thing as being pleased.
yeah,
Like, you can be secure and be displeased with something.
absolutely,
And I think we mix those two things.
Mhm.
It's like being pleased to keep everything the same. That's not true,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm. That's good. That's good.
Well, something the Lord's taught me.
There you go.
What about you? What's next on your list?
So I feel like when you were talking and even just coming to that place of being okay to advocate and say like, no, Lord, or just going to the Lord to say, search my heart,
Mm-hmm.
show me if this is true of my character, and let's deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just a degree of you have to take it to the Lord. So that's prayer. Like you have to be in connection and communication with the Lord constantly. And I think for me, one thing that I have learned, I would say over the course of my life, I've had things, but absolutely something that has been a major shift in the past few years in my life is just my prayer life. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one thing that I have learned, and still am learning, because obviously we're not always like knee jerk is not always to do this in a moment, but it's to go to God first. I think so often just because there's like that instant gratification of like I can talk to someone and I can get an immediate response, that we're so quick,
Yeah.
whether it's something I'm upset about or anything, we
Yeah.
can, you name it. But I have learned to go to God first. And like I said, that I feel like I can confidently say like I have learned that that's what I should do.
Well,
I don't always do it in every situation.
let me pipe in and say, I've wanted to say this the whole time you started, is you really do this well. Like, no, you do. Like,
Well,
I see it, like, in the recesses of your life that's not public, or,
yeah.
like, we have a private life. We don't have a secret life. You know what I mean? But,
Right.
like, I see that in the recesses of your private life, and it really inspires me. And I do think you do that well. And I've seen people weaponize this, like,
Mm.
as a means to never have to be vulnerable with people.
Yeah.
That's not what I see you
Mm.
do. Like, you go and you wrestle with Lord, and then you honestly and vulnerably, humbly bring the broken pieces of, this
Yeah.
is what the Lord and I talked about, and this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And like, you model that really well.
Well,
Anyways,
thank you.
go ahead. I just wanted to
Thanks.
brag.
Well, thanks. But no, just I don't know. I mean, I think when we go through seasons, I think for me there's a couple of things like wrapped up in that, and one is just what's at the forefront of that for me is dependency on the Lord. That when we go through a season of life where you look around and you're like, whoa, there's nothing here. Like the Lord is it. And I think Lori said something when we were recording with her that like struck me. And it's like, when we look around and see like, man, all those things that like I found comfort and peace and whatever in are stripped away, aren't we glad that it's the Lord who remains? And like, I think for me, the degree of learning to go to the Lord in prayer is learning my dependence on the Lord. And that is not something that I have ever done until I was forced to.
Well, it's that rhythm of, I say everything in my life is held by Him,
Yes.
but do I go to
But I
Him
don't.
first as if that's
Yeah.
actually true?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one that was very misaligned in my life, probably for the majority of it.
Yeah.
And so again, don't always do it in every situation, but so like there's an element of still learning that, and there will probably always be, because we can get comfortable.
Sure.
And when we get comfortable, we forget, but like one of the things I find myself even doing now, like on a daily basis, is like I can get maybe halfway through a day and be like, man, Lord, like, sorry, here I am, and I've made my plans for today, and I haven't even consulted you to be like, what do you have for me today? Or, and I know that sometimes like that can sound whatever, but there is a marked difference.
Yeah.
Just in my ability to take whatever comes for the day when I have gone to Him first in the day, in a conversation. I mean, I feel like this was part of what we talked about, maybe from that podcast even. I feel like there was some element of this maybe that we were talking about, where like, okay, if it's a marriage thing, or like there's a conflict that maybe is something you've been thinking about, well, rather than just immediate, and look, Not one of us does this well.
If this gets edited out, we know it was personal.
Yes. Not one of us does this well, but I think we've talked about how we've both witnessed that if we do this, it does go much better. There's a much more productive conversation that can come from it, of just being able to
It's
say,
just
like,
so funny how well we do it.
I mean,
That's what's so funny.
That is, yeah. That, like, you know, everything doesn't have to be resolved immediately. I think maybe you said something
Yes.
about that.
That's
Like, and
a
that's
great
the
thing to
hard
learn.
part. Like, that's the hard part, because it feels like,
Yes.
no, we need to hash this out right now. And I even had a friend, Rebecca, just over the last few years, like, would say things like that, like, there are times where you do need to take a break. Like, maybe the conversation, and counselors for sure. Like, I have heard this a lot of, if it gets escalated in an argument with your spouse, or anyone for that matter, take a break, like, step away from it.
Yeah.
Because
even with your kids.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, especially with our kids.
Yeah.
It's nope. I felt myself, coming to a level that's like, no, we need to calm down, and we need to, like, step away. But it's not just stepping away to calm down. You should be stepping away to spend time with the Lord, because it's in those moments of prayer where a lot of times, like, I have had to ask, similar to you, like, okay, Lord, what am I not seeing in this, or what's not true in this? Where am I at fault? Like, what is my
But even setting a rhythm
contribution
of you wanting to see it through the Lord's eyes instead of just wanting the justice you want.
Yeah, which is hard, because your flesh wants to always be right.
And swift. Anyways,
we moved. Yes. So, anyways, not that's a thing that I don't always do, well every time, but it is something that I've learned, and I do find myself being, I say find myself, I find the Lord being quick to remind me in those moments of, like, excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Come chat for a minute.
Yeah.
Calm yourself down. Go for a walk. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But just the importance of prayer, and the importance of that, like, dependence and communication on the Lord. And I think that rhythm, for someone who is type A and real dependent and capable, I had to learn that somewhat the hard way. But I have learned, like,
I think too, it can be so hard to think that the Lord could actually be that patient with us to go back and wrestle with the same things over and over and over.
Yes.
Because that's not what we see in the world from the very best of people, because we can't get that from people, you know? And so I think that even the thought that I should go back to the Lord as many times as I need to and over can feel like his patience is going to wear out.
Yeah.
His grace is going to run dry, and none of those things are true.
Right.
They're not worldly though. We don't see that pattern. So that's hard, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah. It's a hard one, but
sure.
Here we are.
All things we learn.
All things we learn usually are not through easy means.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Should we end with something fun?
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Something fun.
I don't think I'm learning. What do I have here?
Or if I skipped over something.
I have a lot of things, but I don't know. I could say a lot. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, here's something that I think is kind of fun. Okay, because we could go into a lot of things here. Yeah. Here's something I think is kind of fun. One of the things that really has stuck out to me, I'm not done reading Habits of the Household. Yeah. But there's a chapter about midway that's just on marriage. And so it's like, this rhythm's really important. I think he made this statement that marriage is not just a big theme of the gospel, it is the theme of the gospel, because it's Christ and the church. And so it's an extremely important rhythm in your household, because it's imaging that relationship. Obviously going to be under fire because of that, but it images the gospel to your kids. And so, like, he just talks about the reconciliation, and do they see that, and do they see you pursue each other? He says a lot better than me. But one of the things in that chapter, he talks about a weekly date night, which we're like, I would say pretty good about seeking out
I was
date
about to say, I
night.
feel like y'all do a really great job of
Well, I don't
finding
know,
time.
great, but we do, like, we want to seek that
Yeah.
out, and we it is a priority. But we were talking about this the other night. If you had a weekly date night, you would only have 52 dates in a year, which really doesn't sound like a
No,
lot to
no, it
me.
really doesn't.
Like, but like probably a lot of marriages are going on 7
Yeah,
out of the whole
way
year,
less, way less.
and like, and he talks about like obviously going out on a date, when you can leave the
Yeah,
house and no one can get out of their bed, and you
yeah,
can't get distracted by a phone call or whatever, um uh is better because you're just like literally having the
yes,
rhythm of eliminating distractions to be with this person. But he was like, we did sometimes we just have an at-home date night, and that just means we're not doing not getting on our phones, we're not turning
yeah.
on the TV, we're not doing anything else but sitting down. And he had like really purposeful questions. We talked about these the other night.
Hmm.
And Andrew and I were driving, we had a little drive the other night home, and so we went through some of these, and it was really just like,
Yeah,
it was fun. I
yeah,
mean, we talked about some really deep stuff, but it was so fun to like hear things about his thoughts that he hasn't really thought to voice, and
yeah,
vice versa.
yeah.
But another thing that I really loved was he talked about having a weekly parenting check-in. And like with our kids being 9, 7, and 6, like we are very much in the season where one parent might be constantly thinking about how to
Hmm.
parent. And not that this can't happen at a younger age, because it does, absolutely. But like one parent is constantly thinking about how to parent, respond. And, there's a lot more
Hmm.
proactive thoughts, maybe because that parent's with the kids more,
Right,
maybe because that parent is more drawn to reading parenting books or podcasts, whatever that
right.
is. And then like the tension you can have between each other when it feels like the other one
Hmm.
is not spending as much proactive time thinking about that, and maybe is being more reactive.
Right.
And I think that can be a big like point of
Hmm.
contention in
Yeah.
marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And it honestly is not necessarily because people disagree, but because they can't know what they can't know.
Right.
The like the
Right.
parent that's not as home as much can't know what. And so like just having that time to sit down and say, did you have an important conversation with any of the kids this week that we haven't got to talk about? Who? Well, I think one of the questions, I might be wrong, was who do you feel like you've gotten some really good quality time
Yeah.
with? If you have multiple kids, and who do you feel like you haven't gotten
Hmm.
time to connect with, or maybe they're at a stage where you're struggling to connect, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, or whatever that looks like. And I was like,
I love that.
I love
I
that.
love
Like
that.
that intentionality of getting on the same page and talking through a proactive plan
Yeah.
weekly.
Weekly. Yeah.
Because,
I
and
love that.
I also was like, duh.
I
Why
know.
would we,
I know.
like, what? You're intentionally raising the children in your home. But like, it was groundbreaking, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
say, for
I
me,
mean, no, it
you know,
is.
but
I love that.
you're
That is
still a good
fun.
mom, you
Yes.
know? Anyways.
No, I love that. No,
So
that is
that
fun.
was fun to that's fun
Yes.
to me because
Yes.
these are fun years. And
Yes. Well, and I think you've talked about this before that like your kids are for sure like getting into that the season of life where like you are kind of having to be more
Mhm.
intentional with discipling them. Like
Yes.
you're having more conversations and all of that.
Well, like the older they get, the more questions they have and the more they
Mhm.
realize, but also like the bigger their worlds get.
Yeah.
And so when you're not actively
Yeah.
helping them like transform their minds, then they will be conformed
Oh,
to
absolutely.
worldly habits. And
Absolutely.
that was another one of my things, was like I am learning how truly vastly different the kingdom of God is from the
Yes.
world we live in. And
Yeah.
sometimes I hate that, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm like, could you not function? Could it not
Yeah.
function this way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because it does feel so otherworldly, and it is. And
It is.
I'm so glad it does. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that it does, because I couldn't be here having this
Right.
conversation about him if it didn't. But sometimes that's really, really hard
Yeah. It
because we
is.
want to see it manifest in these ways that we call success and,
Yeah.
Ways that we call progress and whatever,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Anyways.
Well, good deal.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Let's be done.
Yeah.
So wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Well, yeah, until next time, until season 4.
Until season 4. I mean, we'll see each other before
Yeah,
then.
no.
Maybe.
No,
I don't know, actually.
yeah.
Will we? I don't know.
This is goodbye.
2-month hiatus.
Well, thanks. It was really good. I enjoyed it.
Me too.
So
good times.
I'm learning we can show up and have
just chat.
Hopefully an edifying conversation.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I think it will.
Over preparing.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank y'all so much for listening in this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you felt like you had a seat at the table and that you enjoyed season 3. We will miss y'all, but we will be back in season 4 in the fall. Hope you have a great summer.
This is my story. This is your story.